Welcome to this very special edition of the KAJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through their industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have with us Douglas Lynam. He is a Marine, a former Marine, a monk, and a money manager, as well as an author. And we'll learn from him about all about money, also how your personality type secretly sabotages your finances. If you so that we'll try and understand from him, and also his unique framework, blending the Enneagram with financial strategy to break free from self-sabotage and build a life of both wealth and meaning. Welcome to the show, Doug.
Thank you, AJ. Great to be here.
You are welcome. Welcome to the show, Doug. Welcome to India in this online form, and I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people across the globe will benefit from what we are going to talk right now. We'll talk about money. We'll talk about how one can tame the money monster and much, much more. But before that, let's understand a bit about your journey, and quite a journey. Your journey, your background, as well as your story, so that the audience knows who they are listening to.
Yeah, well, it's a bit of a long story. I'll try to keep it short. But as you mentioned, I grew up outside of Chicago, Illinois, in the United States. And excuse me, my alarm clock just went off. I apologize. We turn that off. Sorry about that. Brief interruption for technical difficulties. So I grew up outside Chicago, and then, but when my parents divorced when I was about 6 or 7, it felt like, from my childhood perspective, like money got weaponized. So whenever I'd ask one parent for something, they'd say they would play like they were poor, and say, go ask your other parent. And so even though my dad was a CEO and my mom was a certified financial planner, and we were pretty well off, there's this idea that money was icky and dirty, and it was something that only greedy people cared about. So I tried to run away from that, and I first went to the Marine Corps, and I had a great time. I went to officer candidate school with the Marines, and I graduated at the top of my class. But then I realized that unresolved anger issues and high explosives were a bad combination. So I had a bit of a spiritual awakening. So I decided to become a Benedictine monk. So I went off to a monastery and was a monk for 20 years. Thought I was going to, leave the world of money and materialism behind. Thought that, money was the root of all evil and all those kind of negative mindsets I had. But then, in an ironic twist of fate, our monastery went bankrupt a few years after I arrived. So somebody had to figure that part out, and that was me, for reasons that are complicated. But essentially, I had to learn about money management to pull the monastery out of bankruptcy, and realized at that point, A, I had some talent at it, and B, that money was really important. It's really the tool for action in the world, and without it, you really can't get much of anything done. Even if you want to do good in the world, even if you want to be of service, you got to have some money in your pocket. So I then, fast forward, I got really interested in finance. You can read about this in my first book is called From Monk to Money Manager, and that has my story in it in much more detail. But essentially, I then became an investment advisor and went into the world of finance. And now I help people grow their wealth. And I've written these 2 books on money. And my passion is helping people build their wealth and also have a healthier mindset around it.
Absolutely, Doug. So what is it that you want to tell the world, or telling the world about whatever you are saying? Because you talk about money, you talk about mindset, and, about your former life. So help us understand, that line, also whatever learnings you had has a meaning. People with money want to be a monk who also understands about money. So tell us, from a common person's perspective, who want to live life, but also, live life in a way which is suitable for them, or a life which makes them healthy, a life which gives a meaning to them, from a common person's perspective, anywhere in the world, if they listen to you.
Well, sure. One of the things we now know about money is that your socioeconomic status, your perceived with financial well-being, it has a bigger impact on your overall perceived mental health and mental well-being than the combination of your job satisfaction, your physical health, and your relationship stability combined. Because if you are living in poverty, if you're really struggling to make ends meet, everything is hard. It's like walking over walking on a tightrope over a pit of alligators every single day. And so we now know that your socioeconomic status is also the best predictor of when you're going to die, because poor people get hit with so many things that reduce their life expectancy. They get hit with higher rates of alcoholism, drug addiction, domestic abuse, domestic violence, injury, workplace injury, mental health issues. The list goes on. So it's like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You need to get your basic financial house in order before you can really feel secure and build real happiness in your life. And there's an old saying, that money doesn't buy happiness, but poverty doesn't buy anything.
Absolutely. Well said. Well said. And a lot of people need to understand that. So what is it about money? Many people think not so great about money, especially when they don't have money.
Right.
And people who have money, they think differently. How would you like people to think about money, irrespective of their situation? Because perhaps many people during that bad situation, they start thinking, okay, money is the root of all evils. Why to earn money? From that perspective, especially with your own, individual example earlier on, especially during your growing up days.
Right. Well, I think this is what we call a dualistic mindset around money. That money, we put it into this category: it's all good or it's all bad. We want a simple solution. We either demonize wealth or we glorify wealth, and the truth is somewhere in between. That you could argue that I don't think money is the root of all evil. I think money is the root of everything, good and evil. You can't build schools, build hospitals, clothe the naked, feed the sick without money in your pocket. So what I encourage people to do is to see money as a catalyst, as a tool that it's a tool for most actions. You can't get anything done without money in your pocket. So now how do we use it as a tool for love and service to a suffering world? How do we use it as a way to help you fulfill your highest purpose and really be of service to the world and bring those gifts and talents out to the people around you?
Absolutely. Let's understand it from another perspective. The work that you did, it earned you a private audience with none other than Pope Francis in 2022.
Mhm.
Did you ask him about his views on money, or any of the discussions that led you gauge his view on money? Let's understand a bit about the Pope's mind on money.
Well, we didn't have a long conversation, and neither of us. He was speaking in he was speaking in Spanish, and I was speaking in English, and we had a translator, so it was a little slow, but basically, I did give him copies of my books, which he was grateful for, and he said he would read them. I don't know if he did, but it was. I think I can't speak for the Pope, but he did. He was very encouraging of my work, and very encouraging to keep doing what I'm doing.
Right, right. So, from your perspective, how do you want people to look at money? And when you talk about, taming the money monster with the Enneagram, how should people understand this money monster and the Enneagram? Many people don't know. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. So help us understand from a common
Sure.
person's perspective, including obviously I want to learn about this.
So, yeah, my first book is called From Monk to Money Manager, and that book really goes into the nuts and bolts of finance, like how do you earn, save, invest, insurance, taxes. It's basically a primer on financial literacy. So if you aren't financially literate, you want to learn the basics of finance, that's a great book for you. My new book is called Taming Your Money Monster: 9 Paths to Money Mastery with the Enneagram. It's a book of psychology. It's why do we make dumb mistake? Why do smart people make dumb decisions with their money? What are the patterns that we get stuck in over and over again that cause us to self-sabotage our financial future? And so the Enneagram it's a very complicated system, but Ennea in Greek means 9 and gram means drawn. So the word Enneagram means 9 things drawn together. But what we're drawing, if you think of a circle, think of like a color wheel. And then there's sort of 9 color quadrants on this color wheel, and that's your personality. It's like there's these archetypes of personality that we have. And our personality has a lot of parts to it. It's complicated, but essentially you have a nature portion to your and a nurture portion to your personality. So nature and nurture. Your nature is your sorry, my alarm keeps going off. I don't know why. So the excuse me for that. So to back up. So you have the nature and nurture to your personality, and your nurture is your DNA, and that's your gene expression. And the Enneagram explains the nurture part of your personality. It explains the ego defenses that you developed in childhood to help you survive the biggest threats in your childhood environment. It's basically what allowed you to have self-awareness or self-consciousness in the first place. And there's some really good neurobiology behind it. So it's really rooted in science. But we have these 9 ego defenses, and each one of them has a what I call your greatest unconscious fear that drives your personality. And then when we layer on top of that what I call the attachment theory of money, which is based on the attachment theory of relationships. It's the same thing, but applied to money, for those of you who are familiar with it. If you're not, what it basically says is there's 2 unhealthy mindsets that we can get into around money. One where we're anxiously attached to it, where we're too greedy, too acquisitive. Think Ebenezer Scrooge or Gordon Gekko or the TV show Succession or Billions, where people are really too, where their obsession around money creates suffering for themselves and the people around them. And on the flip side, there's people like me who grew up with a very, what I call, avoidant relationship to money, where we hate dealing with it, where we push money away unconsciously because we hate doing our bills or our taxes or paying attention to our finances, and they tend to get neglected. And then there's now I'm throwing a lot at you, and to wrap it up, there's then also what I call the sort of a jumbled style, where we can be avoidant in one area of our finances, but anxious in another. So there's what I call the 4 pillars of finance. And the 4 pillars of finance are going to be earning, saving, investing, and giving. So earning, saving, investing, and giving are the 4 pillars. And we could be anxious in one area and avoidant in another. So you might be an anxious earner who makes a lot of money, but if you spend all your money on stuff, then you're an avoidant saver. Or there's some people who save really well, but they hate investing. They don't get involved in the stock market. And there's people who make a lot of money, but they never do anything meaningful with it. So they just hoard their wealth and they don't give back to the community around them. So that's basically the overall structure of the book, and then helping you identify what your personality type is, what your money monsters are in those 4 pillars, and how to overcome them.
Absolutely, Doug. So let me understand about your understanding. You were a Marine, you were a monk, then a money manager. How did those experiences, made you look at money at different point in time, and how do you look at money now? Are you looking at it in purely isolation, or do you put everything together and then you look at money in today's time?
Yeah, you have to put it all together, because money touches on every aspect of your life. It touches on your physical well-being, your mental well-being, your spiritual well-being. And so it's bringing all those 3 layers together, body, mind, and spirit, in alignment with your money, with your financial decisions, so that you're living your highest purpose. And so that money becomes a tool to serve that higher purpose, whatever it is for you. And my book really helps you to explore what that might be for you, so that you're really living a life. True wealth, it isn't about having a lot of money. It's about having options to live a life that makes your soul sing.
Absolutely. So where does the personality come in?
Okay.
Monk is not a personality. No. Marine is not a personality. Money manager is not a personality.
Uh-huh.
How did your personality impact your money, looking at money, and how does personality impact people? Should people look at personality first, or should they look at, the other aspects of money?
Well, I think they go together. So it's helpful to look at all of them at once. But I think once you understand your personality, I would start with your personality, because what it tells you is how you view everything, including money. And so the Enneagram doesn't just explain how you relate to money. It explains your basic stance or approach to reality. And I'll give you an example. I'll explain my type a little bit to you. So I'm what's called a type 3 in the Enneagram. And so the way it works is that, so when you were born, you had a physical umbilical cord that connected you to your caregivers. But then that physical umbilical cord has to be cut by a sharp scalpel or blade. But then you immediately in childhood develop what I call a psychological umbilical cord to your caregivers. And you have an egoic codependence with them in the first 5 to 7 years of your life that has to be severed. And that egoic codependence has to be cut by sharp negative emotions. And we know from the neurobiology, there's only three core negative emotions in the limbic system of all mammals. And that would be anger, sadness, and fear. So if you think of a color wheel and we break it into 3 triads or 3 sections, one's anger personality types, one's the sadness, or sometimes shame is another way to think of it. The sadness, shame triad, and then we have a fear triad. And then you got hit in childhood with one of these negative emotions more than the others. And then there's 3 ways you could process that emotion. One way is to internalize it, like giving yourself an emotional wedgie. The other way is to externalize it, like having a food fight with the world. And then the third option is to have both, internalized and externalized. So there's 3 ways to process 3 negative emotions, and that gives us the 9 archetypes of personality in the Enneagram. Now, my type is type 3, and what that means is I have an internalized and externalized sadness that form the core of my personality. And what that means is I have a sadness or shame about how I perceive myself. That's the internalized sadness. Then I have an externalized sadness or shame about how I think other people perceive me. And you put those 2 together and you get the greatest fear for a type 3, which is that you're fundamentally worthless, that you don't have any value in the world. And then we call type 3 the achiever, or I call them I give them car names. I call them the race car of egos, because we're always trying to achieve things in life. We're trying to, start the company, write the books, run the marathons, succeed in the Marines, succeed in the monastery. All the things that I did in my life were attempts to try to assuage that sense of worthlessness. But 3s, we tend to leave our authentic selves in the dust in doing all of that. We're so busy wearing masks to win the approval of the people around us that we lose touch with our authentic selves. And then how that relates to money. So if you're a type 3 like me, and you're in the avoidant category, you develop a money monster, what I call the barrier. You're like an ostrich that buries its head in the sand, because all the shame and grief that dealing with your finances brings up, we tend to equate our net worth with our self-worth. And so when our net worth is low, it brings up all the shame and we don't want to look at it. So we avoid looking at our money in one or more aspects of the 4 pillars. And then that really sabotages our financial lives. On the flip side, the other money monster for type 3 is what I call the blinger, meaning we want a lot of money. We're very anxious about it, but then we take our wealth and we throw it at status symbols. We tend to blow all our money on bling, or like the fancy car, the fancy watch, the nice house, the nice clothes. But so then we struggle to save and invest anything because we've spent all of our money on things to try to get the approval from the world around us. So that's a quick overview of one of the 9 types, and we could talk about the others if there's time.
Absolutely, absolutely. So what is the solution for individuals? They can know about their types, but then there are so many types that are there. How do I find solution for myself? How do I change my personality to get money for myself?
Well, part of it is, so each type has what I call your greatest vice, or the thing that trips you up the most in life. And so you have, so for type 3s, our greatest vice is what we call deceit, meaning we're always putting on masks. We're not necessarily liars, but we're always wearing a mask to win the approval of the people around us. So then there's a specific path, spiritual path, for each of the 9 types to overcome their greatest vice. And for type 3, really what it comes down to is learning to practice authenticity, learning to be honest with ourselves first and foremost, and then being honest about our strengths and weaknesses to the people around us, and really letting our authentic selves come out, so that we can really heal those inner childhood wounds that are driving us. Sometimes they're driving our financial life into a ditch. So and I've laid it out. In my book, I've created an ego map, a very detailed ego map of the shadow structure for each of the 9 types, and then the path to enlightenment or awakening for each of the 9 types. Regardless of your spiritual tradition, this system maps really well onto any spiritual practice. So it's ecumenical. It's not rooted in any one religion, but it plays well with all religious practices. So really it's about getting you deeper into your spiritual practice, and knowing what are the specific virtues you need to sort of work on to overcome these negative mindsets that you have in your head.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Doug. So who is this book for? Taming Your Money Monster, 9 Paths for Money Mastery.
This is for people rich or poor, anybody who struggles with money, anybody who feels like their relationship with their finances is not in good shape, and they're struggling either because they have too much and they feel they don't know what to do with it, or it's sometimes wealth can be very isolating for people in many ways. So how do you overcome that, or how do you overcome these negative mindsets that are torpedoing or sabotaging your financial life in some aspect? So it's really a book for anybody who struggles with money, rich or poor.
Absolutely. So it's already out in the market, or it's people can get it right now?
Yeah, it's available from booksellers everywhere, but you can find it on Amazon very easily, and I can send you the link to that, and you can put that in the show notes.
Absolutely, absolutely. There is so much to learn about money from you, Doug, and I'm sure a lot of people would want to connect with you, learn more from you, also about your books. Any other books that you are writing on money?
I've got 3 more that I'm working on. Yes, those are going to take a while to come out, but yes, I have a lot of content from this second book that didn't get published, because the Enneagram is it's like a fractal. It has all these layers to it. It's very complicated, and I was only able to touch on the first few layers of the fractal in the book. So there's lots more coming after this.
Absolutely. So what's the best way for people to connect with you, Doug?
You can reach me on my website at douglynam.com. That's DOUGLYN as in Nicholas, AM as in Michael. So douglynam.com, and you can reach me at my email, which is doug@douglynam.com, and all my social media are my name, Doug Lynam.
Wonderful, wonderful. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KAJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Thank you so much.